say this. Expecting Dana White to keep his word is kind of foolhardy. Just saying.
Which expires at the end of the year. And they are currently in their exclusive negotiating window here. So April 15th is when that is up. And this happened, less than a month out from that, or a little bit more than a month out from that.
I want
So
to go ahead and say this. I'm not so sure that I put full faith in this report. But then again, at the same time, though, given the fact that pretty much everything is going to streaming, I wouldn't be surprised. Guys, before we fully dig into this, two very quick things. Number one, there's going to be some updates towards the end of the video. I'll go further in detail. I got to alter the schedule this week for a couple of days, but I'll explain that more towards the end. Number two, there will be more videos like this right here going forward on the platform because, as I have said before, I'm going to try to get back to doing a lot more sports and pop culture. Media criticism will obviously still exist because it's a media criticism channel. It's a channel about busting away false narratives, stuff like that there. Of course, there'll also be another video out tomorrow to go along with this one right here, talking about one of our favorite race hustlers, Don Lemon, but that right there is for tomorrow, and I'll probably do that video tomorrow morning and get it released later on in the day. But still, though, I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video because obviously I got to alter the schedule a little bit. Before we fully dig into this, make sure you guys please make sure that you're subscribed. Also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It's the best way to support this channel for free. Please cut the notifications on so that way you guys are notified when videos come out. Also, to go on top of that please hit the like button too. It does help out with the video. It also ensures that the video reaches a much, much larger audience. Let's get this channel to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the month of March, and let's go ahead and dive into this. So Dana White, president of the UFC, is considering leaving. According to this report, he's considering leaving ESPN or ending the contract with ESPN. Well, that's a little bit misleading, but we'll get to that in a second because of the streaming issue that happened this past weekend. I'm showing you guys some of the complaints right here in the B-roll footage, some of the tweets, and of course people were upset because of the buffering issue, but supposedly Dana White is considering going to Netflix. Didn't Netflix have a streaming issue not too long ago with the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight? I don't know if anybody told Dana this, but they had a bit of an issue streaming that fight. People were complaining like crazy. Now, before we get to this New York Post piece, before we get to this report, I want to go ahead and kind of bring something up really quick. ESPN, they took on UFC basically in a partnership back in 2019. It was a 7-year contract. Suppose it was a 7-year contract, but somebody that's actually ending here in the next few months. I think it ends on April the 15th. We'll get to that here in a second. But the reason why it is that the UFC chose to go to ESPN was because ESPN was starting out with ESPN Plus. They had their own streaming network, their own streaming series, or the ability to stream. Of course, when you have something like, say, ESPN Plus, you've got an archive there. You can go in, you can watch old school 30 for 30s, you can watch certain sporting events. ESPN Classic was a very, very big thing growing up. I remember when it actually became an actual literal channel of my cable provider. I used to watch all kinds of stuff. Old fights between Muhammad Ali and George Chuvalo. I remember seeing that there. Of course, Joe Frazier. All that type of good stuff there. ESPN Classic was phenomenal. Of course, you had ESPN 1, ESPN 2, and then eventually ESPN News. And, of course, ESPN, that was its actual literal heyday. Now, some people are going to say that they think that he's leaving because of all the politics. I don't think that that's the case because you got to remember, you got to understand why it was that Dana White chose to get in with ESPN in the first place. And I think it's best explained by this little small segment from the Joe Rogan Experience, which he had Brendan Schaub and another guy on who, forgive me if I don't know the guy's name, and they kind of explained kind of the reasoning behind it or what it was that at least UFC fans were looking forward to about UFC going to ESPN.
Game 7.
So what's going on with the ESPN deal? Like, when does that start?
I don't know.
So UFC is going to be on ESPN now.
Yeah.
No more Fox.
No more
That's
Fox.
done.
2019. No, it finishes at the end of this year.
It was supposed to be Fox and ESPN were going to split it, right?
Yeah, and then Fox didn't want to pay like the premium, but I think it's better. I think it was a home run for the UFC, man, to land at ESPN. It's it's as serious as it gets as far as major sports. Mm-hmm. It's on one network. And also with ESPN, so you have ESPN Plus, which you'll get some fight nights, and you have regular ESPN, ESPN2. With Fox, Not that they didn't do a great job, but it was all FXX, FS2. Like you're like, fuck, where is it?
Where
man?
is it?
And then
Yeah.
now it's on UFC Fight Pass, and now it's here, and it was just go. I think ESPN can learn from the mistakes from Fox and just make it that much better.
I think you're right about that because there's been some times that I thought I had my DVR set, but then I get home and it was on FS1. I'm like, motherfucker.
Or sometimes be like my bat, or it's like my bat NASCAR is playing, so go to FXX times 6. Like, well, fuck, man, where's that at?
Or a baseball game goes long and you got to go to FS2.
Yes.
You got to find it. Like, where is that? Is that 672?
Real quick, headers on top because of the copyright issue. The Joe Rogan Experience is bad for that. I don't want to upset the YouTube censors. But still, though, the point is this right here. Everything that Joe just said was actually true. People would DVR the event, and of course they would come to find out that the television did not actually record that. It was recording something else because Fox would probably let something go a little bit long, like, say, a baseball game, which, by the way, I can go ahead and tell you right now that baseball is kind of linked to this. I'll explain here in a second, but the point is this right here. The event got moved to FS1, it got moved to FS2, and people, quite frankly, couldn't see the event. They'd be out, they want to come back and watch it a little bit later, you couldn't get access to it, and of course that was obviously a problem. However, I think what's going on now is that Dana White is looking at the situation, and he's like, I think we need to renegotiate the contract. That's what I really truly believe is going on here. And why would he want to do that? Well, he knows that ESPN recently just dropped a certain sport that they're no longer going to air. Baseball. Time, resources, money, all that type of stuff there. He knows that ESPN is now free to replace one product with another one, so therefore Dana White's going to want to renegotiate. Now, you're probably asking yourself, wait a minute, I thought it was the streaming issue. No. The streaming issue, what happened this past weekend, is kind of sort of the last straw. But if I didn't say this right before, I'm going to say it now. I may have said it when I tried to record this video the first time, but I'm going to say it right now. I don't think that Dana White is the most trustworthy of people when it comes to keeping their word, but we'll get to that. There's also this merger with the NBA as well. ESPN has made some very, they've made some very peculiar choices in the past couple of years. Like, for example, they chose to dole out a bunch of money to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman to get them to come over and commentate Monday Night Football when you had people in-house that would probably do the job for a lot less. It seems to me like Disney as a whole is trying to get away, or at least certain parts of Disney, because Disney obviously owns ESPN. They're trying to get away from the politics and the woke nonsense. And you would probably think to yourself that maybe Dana White would be on board with that, but this whole thing about him possibly going to Netflix just seems to me, like I said before, like a good old-fashioned negotiation tactic. But speaking of that New York Post report, let's go ahead and get to that. Now, guys, 3 small segments. I'm going to give you guys commentary at the end of each one of them, and then I'll explain to you guys why it is that putting full faith in Dana White's probably not a good idea, but here we go.
Amazing piece that got a lot of traction, very comprehensive. Could you explain what happened over the weekend and the bigger story around it?
Yeah, so for those of you that aren't using the Russian links to watch the fights, if you were trying to purchase the fight on ESPN Plus, basically you were getting a try again notice on the pay-per-view. Anyway, long story short, it took pretty much the entire main card for fans to be able to watch the fights. Now, that obviously upsets everybody, and that's not good for business. I
mentioned it earlier. All right, I mentioned it earlier. They had an issue with the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. All right, streaming was bad. People were complaining. People were complaining about this past event. By the way, the price of pay-per-views is through the roof. And Dana White did try this already with UFC Fight Pass. $7.99 a month is what it originally was supposed to be. You had access to every single UFC event, fight. You could just type it in the search, pull up any fight and watch it. Episodes of The Ultimate Fighter, any season. Oh, by the way, they had streaming issues there. I remember that because I was a Fight Pass member at one point in time. And guess what? When you wanted to get a pay-per-view, your discount was pretty much non-existent. Something else, too, to go along with streaming, the WWE, they recently went to Netflix as well. I'm a little bit angered by that, and here's the reason why. Because when they were on Peacock, you could at least go and look up an old episode of Raw and get the actual episode. Right now on Netflix, if you type in Monday Night Raw 1993, you only get like 8 different episodes. You're not getting the full library. You don't get the full library for 1994. You don't get it for 95, 96, any part of the 90s or even the early 2000s. By the way, I would think that the WWE would want those late 90s, early 2000s. I'm talking about from about 1997, the true start of the Attitude Era. The true story of the Attitude Era really began when Bret the Hitman Hart decided to turn heel in the ring against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13. I would figure that each episode from Raw was War, all the way till about 2002, those right there would be the ones that you would want to keep in the library the most for people to go back and watch, because the Attitude Era was probably the best era outside of the Golden Era. Actually, a lot better because we all grew up on the Attitude Era. The point is this right here. With streaming, you always had the risk of buffering issues. And I think Dana knows this, but then again, at the same time, though, I also think that Dana is aware of streaming issues on Netflix. But let's get back.
Review buys. So, think about, just to encompass that entire issue, Alex Pereira gets pay-per-view points. Think about how much money he lost by people not purchasing the pay-per-view as a result. So yeah, not a good situation. Fans didn't get their money back either. The ESPN had said that, we fixed it by the main card, by the main event. So that's kind of is what it is. It's not a good situation for the UFC. And
no, it ain't. If you want to lose a chunk of your base, just screw them over on a pay-per-view. Let me give you another example. We were talking about wrestling a while ago. 1998 Halloween Havoc. The main event that night was supposed to be, or the last match of that night was supposed to be Diamond Dallas Page versus Bill Goldberg. The match before that, Hollywood Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, ended up going a little bit over. It was kind of a stinker. It was kind of a dud. Probably should have not even been a match on the card. It ended up forcing, let's just say that it ended up forcing pay-per-view to cut the event kind of short. You got about 5 minutes into the Diamond Dallas Page, Bill Goldberg, WCW Heavyweight Championship match, and next thing you know, you've got WCW being forced to refund a lot of money to a lot of paying customers who, quite frankly, got ripped off. UFC events, they're pretty damn expensive. Last one I bought was back in 2021. I want to say it was the Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier 3, which, by the way, seeing Conor McGregor in the White House today, and then I look at that, and then I think back on the last memory he gave us in the UFC.
Dr. Savage! Dr. Savage! Lieutenant Dr. Savage!
Yeah. I keep thinking to myself that the UFC is definitely declining when it comes to overall marketable talent. Some people think Sean O'Malley is marketable, but cucks typically tend not to do very, very well with the male audience. Also, John Jones is getting old. He likes to run away from fights. Of course, he's dominant. He normally wins fights, but now he's in a process where he can just pick whoever he wants to fight. Stipe Miocic should not have been in the ring with him. The guy's over 40 shouldn't have been fighting John Jones. John should be fighting someone like, say, Tom Aspinall. And the more and more that we hear about John Jones potentially fighting Tom Aspinall, the more and more it makes me think to myself that, John's probably going to pull out of that one too. Or he's going to try to drag it out as long as he can until the situation becomes more favorable to him. Then, of course, you've got someone like, say, Israel Adesanya, who was so dominant it was boring. And then, of course, he gets beat by Sean Strickland, who the UFC tries to market. But Sean Strickland, it doesn't matter what political side of the aisle you were on, Sean Strickland's fight record is not exactly a glorious one. If you actually go through and look at it, it's riddled with decisions and split decisions. The fact of the matter is this right here. The UFC doesn't really have anybody that's marketable at this moment in time, and there's not really a whole lot of places for the UFC to go except maybe Netflix. But that right there does come with some caveats, which we will get to here in a second, some potential problems. But let's go ahead and watch the last bit.
Call Sunday morning, there was daylight savings and stuff like that, so I was kind of groggy. I woke up 9 o'clock, got a call from somebody, and without diving into too many details on that, basically, like, the prevailing sentiment is that the UFC is very upset with ESPN. So the UFC has a 7-year deal with ESPN to host their pay-per-views, which expires at the end of the year, and they are currently in their exclusive negotiating window here. So April 15th is when that is up, and this happened, less than a month out from that, or a little bit more than a month out from that.
It's a negotiation tactic. That is what this is. I don't think that Dana White is ready to go to Netflix. I think that Dana White looked at the fact that the ESPN is they decided to drop Major League Baseball. They've also recently released some talent, gotten rid of a few shows. It's possible that they may want to venture a little bit more in sports and cut down on the debate shows to a certain degree. But I think what the hell is really and truly going on here is that the UFC, they see an opportunity to slide in. By the way, the UFC probably needs more exposure on said television network. You got the Pat McAfee show where you'll get more interviews with Dana White, potential fighters. and that video, of course, gives you more exposure and more overall reach. I think that is what Dana White is trying to do, not go to Netflix. By the way, I did say that there was some caveats with Netflix, and I'll go ahead and tell you guys that before I give you my full reasons why it is you probably shouldn't trust Dana White on this issue or trust him to keep his word. And here it is. With Netflix, you have subscriptions are going up. They're going up in price. I know that I cut my subscription, which was about 20 some odd dollars, down to the one that's $15 to gain access to the UFC. Guess what? You're probably going to pay probably $25, or you're probably going to pay $25 again a month just to get access to it. And of course, if you want to upgrade fully, you're paying $35. And in a year, it becomes $45. Then it becomes $55. After a while, it becomes ads like crazy, and you can barely get through anything. It's the same thing with YouTube TV as well. I mean, the price is absolutely insane. It's absolutely ridiculous. And there's another reason why it is that it might not be a good idea for Netflix to take them on, because after a while, the price is just going to get too high and people just aren't going to want to be members of Netflix anymore. Or they'll just get the cheapest damn monthly subscription is what they'll do. But I did say that there are a couple of reasons why it is I would not trust Dana White to keep his word on this. Well, I remember back in 2010, I think it was, he said that Kimbo Slice would never fight in the UFC, and the next thing you know, Kimbo Slice is on The Ultimate Fighter. I also remember very, very well the night of the fight between George St. Pierre and Johnny Hendricks, how it is that Dana White came out after the fight, after that controversial fight, that controversial judging decision, and he completely, totally ripped the Nevada Athletic Commission, saying that he was considering leaving. He did this on multiple occasions. He never left. So therefore, this right here is just exactly what I said it was. A good old-fashioned negotiation tactic. But then again, though, I could be wrong, and I'm going to want to get you guys' thoughts on that. Now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out, but I'm going to go ahead and give you those updates that I promised you guys at the very, very beginning of the video. So just bear with me for a very quick second. Let me just kind of explain how I got to adjust the schedule. So Wednesday, I'm not going to be here at all. I'm going to be going out of town. I'll probably only be gone just the day of Wednesday. So the videos that you guys see on Wednesday and Thursday are going to be videos that I made on Tuesday. Okay, just want to just go ahead and give you guys a bit of a heads up. This video right here, I'm obviously making on Tuesday night to release, I'm making it on Monday night to obviously release it on Tuesday. And of course, tomorrow night's video will be a video that I'm probably going to do probably tomorrow morning and get it released later on in the afternoon. It's going to be on Don Lemon, so yeah, it's not going to be, it's very easy to kind of cut through it. I'm going to do that there, and there's probably going to be 2 other videos that come out on Wednesday. They'll probably be a little bit shorter. I want to respond to this Anthony Mackie, this thing where he basically said that success is not earned, it's given. I want to kind of respond to that there, as well as this Tyrese Gibson, cray-cray monologue, blame anything, everything, Trump voters. There may be a specialty video that's kind of trending, but the Thursday video is probably going to be the one that I have out there on the Last Was franchise and what's going to happen in the upcoming season and why it is that it's pretty much the end of the franchise and you probably shouldn't expect anything else. It's probably going to be very, very cringe too. Still, though, just figure I'd give you guys those updates as well, and also something else too. Expect more videos like this right here going forward. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.